Welcome to the Strangeology Podcast. I'm your host, Jeff Foran. From cryptozoology, ufology, and the paranormal, to legends, forbidden history, and more. Listen in and explore the world of the weird and unexplained. Join me as I look into strange and fascinating tales and unearth the truths and theories behind some of the world's greatest mysteries. Be sure to head on over to our HQ, Strangeology.com, where you can check out our blog, episodes archive, gift shop, and so much more. Now sit back, relax, and join me as we get weird. Hey everyone, welcome back to the show. I hope everyone is doing well. We're just getting over a slight heat wave here in New England. Did get pretty warm and humid for a few days, and slight compared to what was just going on out in the Pacific Northwest and West Coast in general. I'm hoping my friends and listeners who live out that way are staying cool and safe during these wild times. But anyway, my summer has gotten started pretty much hitting the ground running. I've been super busy working on new merch designs and also working out logistics and getting things planned out and ordered for my vendor table for all the events that I'm going to be doing later this year. The first one coming up, of course, is the Cryptid Bash, which is happening on August 7th. It's hosted by the Moth Boys podcast, and it's happening at the Morgantown Art Party in Morgantown, West Virginia. And that's going to be a really awesome event. They've got all sorts of vendors, and Small Town Monsters is going to be screening some films. It's really going to be a good time. So if you live in the area, definitely hit that up. And also an official announcement on the show. I recently signed up to be a vendor at a brand new festival taking place in Maine in early November. It's Fortean Fest in Springvale, Maine on November 6th, which if you're in New England or Maine in the Portland area, definitely come out. It'll be a fun time. It's brand new, and it's hosted by the Paranormal 5. Missy actually heads up the Paranormal 5, and she wrote a really cool blog article for the Strangeology.com HQ website a little while back. So it'll be a good time. Definitely check it out. And of course, end of November, or I guess really more the week before Thanksgiving, I'll be traveling to Kentucky to be checking out CryptidCon, the big time show. So that'll be a good time. There's one or two more that I'm thinking of signing up for that are a little bit closer, but TBD on those. Anyway, so I'm recording this intro on World UFO Day, and what better time to go over some UFO news before we get into the main segment of the show. I'm sure, as most of you know, by this point, the UAP report from the Pentagon dropped on June 25th, and it was a whopping 9 pages long. Apparently, from my understanding, there's another 70 or so pages that are still classified that the public can't see. That's just for the Senate. I know there was a lot of hype being built around this report since word of it got out last December, and everyone was super excited that maybe this was gonna be some kind of bombshell thing, and I was definitely excited about the possibilities, but I wasn't gonna get my hopes up because if you remember how long the government took to acknowledge the existence of Area 51. So there's stuff that they don't want us to know, but the long and short of it is that this report worked up by the Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, or the UAPTF, states pretty much that they need more data beyond the 144 events investigated between 2004 and 2021. And clearly there's way more than that for decades and decades of information, and especially with recent revelations from certain people in the military that are saying like they pretty much experience things out at sea like almost every day that they can't explain, which is super interesting and needs to be looked into. But yeah, basically this report was like we cannot confirm nor deny that some of these reports involve something otherworldly and not human. So, it seems like that explanation, at least for some, is still on the table as far as like extraterrestrials go. I think there was like one that they did confirm was just a balloon, which is funny because it's always the explanation. Like the Roswell incident was actually just a weather balloon type of thing. Though I do find it interesting that the report does talk about unusual flight characteristics of these things. And there was one section bolded and underlined, and that stated that that UAPs threaten flight safety and possibly national security. And of course, it would be nice to see the classified portion of the report, but I suppose ultimately this is a big step in the right direction. And if it is part of a larger disclosure, it's definitely a slow drip, or so it seems. Anyway, if you haven't read the report yet and you do want to read it, you can find it linked on tons of news sites, or you can go to the Office of the Director of National Intelligence website, and you should be able to find it under the press release section fairly easily. It's, I think, 2 or 3 posts down from their most recent press releases at this point. All right, so on with the show. In today's episode, my guest is Jonathan Dodd, who is an awesome artist and loves all things weird and strange and Bigfoot. So we had a really fun conversation, and I think you're all going to like it quite a bit. And just as a quick heads up, there were some connectivity issues with the Zoom call and some audio quality issues during the main portion of the show. So I tried to clean things up as much as I could, but it is what it is, and we make do with what we got. So let's just jump right into it. All right, welcome back to the Strangeology podcast. Tonight, I have the privilege of chatting with Jonathan Dodd. Jonathan Dodd is a Virginia-based independent artist, illustrator, and storyteller. And he specializes in an impressionistic style of painting and is perhaps most well-known for his series on Sasquatch. He also works in a highly stylized comic book-esque style for illustrations as well. Jonathan has been long inspired by nature, spooky campfire stories, and the unexplained. So, Jonathan, how are you doing tonight? How did I do?
I'm doing awesome. So good. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of Strangeology, and I really love all the content that you put out. Also, your merch is top notch. Love all the shirts. That's actually how I kind of like came to find you through, I think it was your Nightcrawler shirt.
Right on. Yeah, that's a favorite.
That one definitely is awesome. Yeah. So yeah, it's awesome work.
Thank you. That's awesome to hear. Thank you. Well, I'm happy to have you on the show tonight, man. So this is going to be cool. Why don't we just get into it? Can you tell me the Jonathan Dodd origin story? Like, where did your journey with art begin?
Well, I guess it started really early for me. My parents are actually both artists of sorts. My dad's more of like a storyteller type, like he can just think of on the fly any kind of crazy story and just like go off on it. My mom's more of a traditional artist. she does like watercolor stuff, and she's very crafty as well. So I kind of grew up in it. I can remember my dad, he used to work at a print shop, or he used to run a print shop, and he would giant reams of paper, and we would set it out on the kitchen table and just kind of like, you know, lay it all out with, you know, paper, pens, pencils, paintbrushes, and then we just go to town, like telling stories, drawing, you know, drawing from comic books and like all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it started early for me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like, you know, most people in the art community, they have some kind of really early roots with that kind of thing. I was always into art growing up myself, although like my folks weren't too terribly into the whole art scene or anything like that. But I later found out I'm also a musician. And I found out, you know, when I was probably a teenager, that my dad used to play drums for a band back in the 60s. And I was like, okay, that's where that came from.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
weird to like when you figure out something new about your parents that you didn't really know.
I know,
So
I know. Yeah.
that's
And my dad has this whole Woodstock, like going to Woodstock back in 1969 story, like with his friends, and then getting
nice.
left with the car during a downpour, and he actually never even like made it into into the whole thing. You just
Oh
hung out and could
no.
hear the music from a distance type of thing.
Yeah. I watched a
So
documentary on that, on Woodstock, and yeah, I think like they just didn't have it like under control. So like everybody just kind of like swooned in there. Were like, well, I guess if you have a ticket, that's cool. If not, you know, come on in. They just made
right.
it a free event at that point. Then it
Yeah,
like
yeah.
poured down rain the entire time.
Right.
Really crazy.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely crazy times back then for sure. So you're well known for like your Bigfoot and Sasquatch paintings. And I think the first time you mentioned you had kind of become aware of me and what I do with like the Fresno Nightcrawler stuff. And I think the first piece that I saw of yours and I was like, ooh, this is awesome, was a piece that you call Poke. Um, which for listeners out there, it's essentially the scene is a tent, and it's like up on like a mountain pass, and there's snow everywhere, and there's like lantern light glowing through, and there's this like, you know, 8, 9, 10 foot tall Bigfoot Sasquatch creature was like poking the tent. Um, and it's funny because maybe it's a little bit of a synchronicity, but around that same time, I think I was doing like a listener or follower stories series, and Cache Valley Bigfoot had sent me this story where he had a encounter very much like that, and I was like, oh, that's
Oh.
what that probably looked like. Like way out in I think it was Utah. So that was pretty cool. Like what made you decide that you wanted to like focus a lot of your work painting this mythical creature that we call Bigfoot?
I mean, Bigfoot has always like really been like on my mind, I guess. He's like a little kid. I can remember like being able to, you know, whenever I'd go into the elementary school library, I could tell you where the Bigfoot section was. Like I would make a beeline right there, you know, and I could find all the cryptid books in the library. I knew where they were. So I mean, it's always been something that I've really been interested in, and it's kind of like captured my imagination since I was a kid.
Yeah.
But with those paintings, it actually kind of happened a little bit by accident. Like I was, so I had just gotten, you know, the Procreate on the iPad, and I was playing around with it. Like I had it for a long time, but never really got into it. I'm more of a traditional artist. Like I have like canvases and stuff around my office, but um, I was just playing around with it, trying to get that same, you know, traditional paint style, but with a digital format.
Yeah.
So I was just playing with it, and you know, I would look on Pinterest or something and find like a nice like landscape scene, and then try to recreate it digitally. And then one day, I think I was just kind of like bored with it, and then I just started sketching a Sasquatch in the painting that I was doing. And then I was like, that would be a cool idea. I think like if I did like a series of sort of nature inspired like landscapes, but they just happen to have a Sasquatch in them. So I mean,
Yeah.
that's kind of where it originated. I guess there was the seed that was in me for since I was a child, and then it just kind of grew from there as I was experimenting with different paint styles.
Oh, that's awesome. So, all right, we're back. We had a little bit of interference there. So, Jonathan, you do both traditional and digital art. Is there a particular medium you like working with more? Like you mentioned, you work with Procreate on the iPad. Has that become kind of like your go-to for creating?
For now it has, and really only until I can get my studio set up. During quarantine, we actually moved to our new house, and I have my office is just in shambles, and like I don't have anything organized. So it's really at this point it's just easier to pick up the iPad and just go for it.
Sure.
No cleanup that way either, which I really like. It's kind of a lazy man, a lazy artist medium.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
I
yeah.
really enjoy it. Actually, it's a lot of fun.
Cool. Yeah, I definitely want to try that medium out. Like when I do my own designs, I usually grab a pencil and do it the old fashioned way, just draw it on a piece of paper, and then I'll
Mm-hmm.
digitize it from there, just using my mouse usually. I have a Huion tablet, but it's, the old school kind where you have to look at the screen on your computer, and there's like a little bit of a learning curve to it, but I've gotten used to it. But definitely want to try doing like the on-screen drawing at some
Well,
point.
it's actually pretty cool because if you know what you're doing with the traditional medium, it actually translates really well into
Yeah,
digital.
yeah, that's very cool. Very cool. Now I was reading that you have some background in film. Are you still doing stuff with film? Can you talk about that for a minute?
Not like professionally.
Hmm.
We do have a small production company. It's called a Dodd Brothers Film. Me and my brother run it, also with my
Cool.
cousin. We do like some like small commercial stuff, and we've actually branched off the last couple years into, well, not this past year, but the last couple years into wedding videography. So that's actually a pretty good moneymaker, to you get like 4 or 5 weddings a year or more sometimes, and then you can put that money into doing something a little bit more creative. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean,
definitely.
we still do it. We still do it every now and then. We haven't written anything. I think everything's kind of been on hold just because of the whole COVID thing. But
Sure. Yep.
um, we hope to. We have been talking recently and been like, we gotta get together and do something. Got to make a video or a film or something.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, the wedding business is certainly can be pretty lucrative. Yeah. Um,
Yeah, it's not bad if you can take it.
yeah, I know. It can probably be pretty stressful as well. I would think. Um, where would you say your favorite place to be creative is? Is it in your studio, or do you have like another spot, like on your property
um,
or your house, or
Actually, yeah, I mean it's really just on my couch at this point.
yeah,
Um, I I kind of I feel like I do my best work like in the morning. Like so I guess like wake up in the morning like early, make a cup of coffee, sit down on the couch with the dogs, pull out the iPad and just, start creating. So I mean that's kind of like my happy place.
nice, nice, yeah. You really crank stuff out. I've
I try
noticed.
to.
Yeah,
And I mean, it's kind of slowing down a little bit. Like during quarantine, I had so much time to devote to the iPad, but like I'm kind of like feeling like I need to get the hell out of the house at this point. So it
cabin
it will
fever setting
slow
in.
down a little bit, just a heads up.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, speaking of projects, let's talk projects because
You've mentioned you've got several you're working on.
Mhm.
I wanted to talk about these cryptid beer labels that you've been releasing like nonstop. I don't know how many. You've got like a dozen of them so far. What's the story behind those?
Those just so there's this I guess part of Procreate, there's this application where you can sort of mirror your screen. So you split right down the middle, and whatever you draw on one side will draw on the other automatically. And I've
Gotcha.
seen brands and like logo designers use it like really well. And I was really inspired to try my own logos. And because I'd been sort of on, the cryptid kick recently, I was like, I need to do something with cryptids. And I'm big into craft beer as well. So I was like, it just kind of fit. And then I got really inspired and started like getting online and figuring out like all these different beer types and trying to pair it with, the correct cryptid for that beer. And it was a fun project. So I mean, it wasn't like anything, it wasn't like a commissioned work or anything like that. It's
Gotcha.
just strictly a passion project at that point.
Yeah, yeah. It might be a good idea to find some investors and microbrewers that want to start a cryptid themed like beer line. That would be fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. What's the favorite one of those that you've done so far?
Ooh. Oh man. Let's see. I actually just got a couple of them printed up as stickers. Which one did I get? I got the Snallygaster one. The Snallygaster might be one of my favorites. That
Cool.
and the Chupacabra. I
Uh,
don't know, but Van Meter Visitor is really good too. I don't know. I'm having trouble picking one. What do
yeah,
you think?
they're all great. I really like your Chupacabra one though. I think that's probably my favorite out of all the ones you've done so far.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great.
That started as a live. Like I went live one day and Sam Sheeran actually was like, "Hey, do a chupacabra." And I was like, "Okay, I got to do a chupacabra now." Sam Sheeran chimed in.
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah,
You know what? It's awesome. Go ahead.
that was really it. I was just like, "Man, that's so cool." So become kind of buddies over Instagram, and he's a really inspiring guy. So I'm glad to be friends with him.
Nice. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm pretty sure that I popped in briefly uh, when you were doing
Yeah.
that Instagram live, and I was like, "Oh, that's pretty cool." But I had to bounce pretty quick
No,
after
that's
that. But
yeah, I do remember that.
yeah. Um, so next up here, logos. You've done a lot of logos for
Mhm.
some different podcasts, and one of the ones that I really love the look of is the one you did for Bigfoot Crossroads. Can you talk about the process for that? Like, was it a collaboration
Yeah.
or with
Oh
back
yeah,
and forth, or did they just say,
definitely.
"Do it, have at it"?
No, no, that's his name is Matt Knapp.
Yeah,
He's actually pretty big into the podcasting world. Like, well, I guess he did. He got a YouTube channel. It was Bigfoot Outlaws, and that has kind of like spawned Bigfoot Crossroads. And basically, I think he wants to do encounter stories, and then what he wanted to do was he wanted to rebrand himself basically as
mm,
something different, but more Bigfoot oriented. And he
gotcha.
wanted his instructions to me were unsolved mysteries meets in search of. So I was like, so at that point I was like, okay, I got to do this. I love doing like the retro style stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah, I had a real fun time doing that.
yeah. No, it's very much harkens back to like the 80s, and now that you say like unsolved mysteries, like I definitely
Mhm.
I can definitely feel that vibe for sure.
Yeah.
No, that's great. And yeah, um gosh, you're also working on cover art for a book series called Tapestry of Worlds. What's that
Mhm.
all about, and how's that all been going?
That's been really going well, actually. So I got hooked up with this author through Lauren Smith of Nightcrawler's Bigfoot Radio.
Yeah.
I did a couple things for her, and then she was like, I got to introduce you to my friend. She's an author, and she's got a podcast called Weird Realities. So I got in touch with her, and her name is Hadley Thorne. And Hadley has this podcast called Weird Realities, and she was like, I need to have a logo for Weird Realities. So I did that for her. And then she was like, I also have this book series that I'm thinking about trying to get some art for. Would you be interested in doing that? And I was like, hell yeah, I would love to do that.
Nice.
And it was my first book cover ever. I've never done a book cover ever. I was really stoked to do that, and she was really down with my style and everything. I think she and I are just like really on the same wavelength when it comes to like the creative stuff. Like she really likes that sort of like graphic novel kind of style, like comic book style that I really like to do. So yeah, the first one I did with her was Tapestry of Worlds, and it was actually part 2 called Running and Gunning. And then that went over well for her. She really liked that. So she was like, you got to redo my first book too. So I ended up doing 2 books with her, and the next one's coming down the pike. So hopefully I'll be getting that one out here pretty shortly as well.
Nice. Great. Now the Tapestry of Worlds isn't necessarily like cryptid themed, is it?
No, it's more of like a post-apocalyptic sort of like mashup with like fantasy kind of.
Gotcha.
At least the first book is. The second book, her goal is to really like mash up a bunch of different genres.
Gotcha.
So like the first book is a little bit more like fantasy oriented and like horror, like gothic horror. And then the second one is like post-apocalyptic meets like military and fantasy. So I mean, they're really just mashups at their essence, and they're really cool. I haven't read all of them yet. Like she would give me, you know, certain excerpts and stuff like that, and like character descriptions, and she had like all these like, you know, Pinterest boards and stuff like that that I would go in and I would get inspiration. But yeah, I'm planning on, once I have a little bit more time, really getting into those, because she's a great writer.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. For sure. Wow, man. So you're really like doing a lot of different things here, but you know, it's not necessarily all cryptid based, but you know, it's great.
That's kind of the way I like it, though, just because I don't know, I'm kind of ADD about stuff. Like if you look at my Instagram, you can see like I'll go through phases. Like I went through that like fine art Sasquatch phase, and now I'm in sort of like the beer label phase, and then
right,
kind of it's a little all over the place actually. And I don't know, I want to say I want to be a little bit more focused, but I know I won't do that.
Yeah, it's good to mix things up, you know. It keeps things interesting for sure. Well, so I'm wondering, Jonathan, what's the first weird story you remember that got you into the whole world of the unexplained?
First weird story. Well, I mean, like I told you before, my dad was a storyteller. So I mean, I'm sure he started me out on my weird journey through the unexplained, I guess.
Yeah.
But I can't remember off the top of my head exactly what the story was. I know also as a child I was very influenced by The Wizard of Oz, the film The Wizard of Oz, and the book The Wizard of Oz. Actually, the first drawing I ever did at 2 years old was of the Wicked Witch of the West.
No kidding. That's fun.
My mom actually showed it to me not too long ago. She was like, "This is your first drawing." And like held it up. I was like, "Oh my God, that's awful."
Like, Mom, you saved that? Why? No, that kind of stuff's cool to have, you know, when you're an adult.
Yeah.
Like, oh, interesting. That's awesome.
But yeah, like I was really, you know, as a kid, like inspired by movies like that. Like that, they just kind of like, you know, prep my brain, I think, for, you know, the weird stuff that would come.
Gotcha. Um, were there any like TV shows or movies in particular that really stood out to you?
Mm, actually, yeah. Well, number one, definitely The Wizard of Oz. But then, have you ever heard of Return to Oz?
I have, but I've never actually watched it.
That's a trippy movie. You should definitely check that out.
Okay.
'Cause that's another like really weird like 80s movie that like was just not for children at all, but for some reason like I really attached to.
Interesting.
Um trying to think other stuff. Let's see. Hmm. Let me see. I wrote some stuff down. Hold on, let me check.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's funny. Like when I was growing up, I used to watch like unsolved mysteries with my folks, and like the theme song for that show always scared the hell out of me for some reason or
Yeah.
another.
Yeah, definitely.
They
But
really went
now, but
for it.
now it's kind of nostalgic. I don't know
It is.
if you watch sort of like I wasn't really a huge fan of the new Netflix version of Unsolved Mysteries, but the intro definitely hooked me. I was like, oh my God, this is like nostalgia bomb.
Yeah,
I
for
mean, it was
sure.
cool.
Yeah, I only
Um,
checked out a few episodes of the new series, but I have a lot going on, so I haven't been able to catch up with the rest of it.
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah. Another story I think that actually is kind of brings us back around to cryptids. Is the Albert Ostman story, and I'm sure you're very familiar with that one. The guy who was kidnapped by Bigfoot. Um,
Yeah.
that one that one was probably one of the first stories that I read about Bigfoot as a
Mm.
child. I told you I would go to the library and I could go right to the Bigfoot section. That was one of the stories that really like grabbed me, and I
Yeah.
think it's like really still just has a place in my brain.
God.
That's a that's a super wild story.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. Um, so maybe more of a philosophical question here. What is it about the strange and unexplained uh, do you think draws so many people to it? Because there's a whole community of people. It's a
Yeah.
lifestyle for some, for sure.
Oh yeah. Yeah, definitely. I think I think it's just a human thing, really. Like we're just sort of drawn to that unexplained, like otherworldly kind of stuff. Like I feel like we want to think that we're very like scientific and focused as like humans,
Yeah,
but I think really in all realness we're really just a bunch of apes that are very superstitious and just have all these beliefs and stuff like that. So when something like weird happens, like we're like really hyper focused on it for some reason.
right. Yeah, that's definitely makes a lot of sense for sure. There's always the question of like who we are, why we're here, are we alone, and then you hear all these
Yeah.
weird stories of people encountering all this stuff out in the world that just doesn't really seem to line up with accepted
Mhm.
understanding of reality. And it's just like, well, maybe this maybe this isn't all there is, and there's something weird going on for sure. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah. So you're from Virginia, right?
Mhm. Yep.
You do you
Born and
feel
raised.
where like you grew up had any impact on you developing an interest into this whole Fortean world?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, I grew up like in the country basically. So like, I grew up in the woods. Me and my brother, we would, for the day, we would go out into the woods and just, play around. And nature really inspires me. So I think that's one thing that I try to translate into my artwork is just a sense of an appreciation for nature.
Mhm.
So that's definitely influenced me a lot. And then I'm also like King George is the town that I'm from, which is very close to, like, less than 30 minutes away from historic Fredericksburg.
Oh,
And so that's like a big Civil War town, and like every building is haunted for whatever reason. So we uh we had a great time. Like we would go on like ghost tours and stuff around Fredericksburg. Like literally every cemetery is supposed to be haunted around there. So I mean, it's like it's that's definitely very inspiring. Like for the like the weirder side.
yeah, that's awesome. I had not really been all that aware of all the hauntings and paranormal activity in Fredericksburg. That's pretty cool.
It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's actually nuts.
Which I guess tour or like building or place there would you say is probably the most active or like your favorite spot to visit?
Well, I do have a story. This is when I was a young child in the early 90s. We went to, it was a field trip, an elementary school field trip. We went to historic Kenmore, which is George Washington's sister's house.
Hmm.
And it's sort of this like opulent brick building that I guess like pre-Revolutionary War um, opulence, I guess you would
Huh.
call it. Um, and so we went there on a field trip, and me and some friends got a little sidetracked and, away from the group. And we were looking into this one room and you could see through the door crack of this room. And it looked like somebody in the bed in that room. You could see like the lump in the bed, and it looked like long hair coming out. And that freaked us out. And I guess, I mean, I try to be skeptical about things, but like that really freaked me out. I mean, I guess it could be somebody, on their lunch break or whatever, sleeping in one of the historical beds. I don't know, but
Seems unlikely.
it totally seems unlikely.
Yeah.
So yeah, me and a couple kids, and I keep meaning to reach out to these kids. The other day I was thinking about, I was like, I got to reach out to them and see if they remember this the same way I do. But yeah, so we thought we saw a ghost that day.
That's pretty wild. And it was during the daytime?
It was during the daytime. Yeah.
Wow.
During a day tour.
That's pretty
We
interesting.
were off sort of in a different area of the building though than the tour was going on.
Okay.
So I don't know, we thought we were rebels or whatever,
Yeah.
but yeah, so that was strange.
Took a trip off the beaten path and ran into some high strangeness.
That's right.
There you go. That's when it happens, you know.
Yeah.
Oh wow. So now Virginia, uh, what are your favorite Virginia-based cryptids?
Um, well, we don't have a ton, which is weird because
I know.
I feel like everywhere around Virginia has a cryptids. So like West Virginia has a million cryptids.
They got all the cryptids. Right?
Flatwoods Monster, Grafton Monster, Bigfoot, they got everything over in West Virginia.
Yep.
And then even, like Kentucky is just like down there. I mean, they got a ton of stuff too. Maryland, has got the Snallygaster. Pennsylvania, is a little bit, further north, but I mean, it's like they got a lot of Bigfoot stuff going on there. But yeah, Virginia doesn't have a ton of cryptids. Like I know there's Bigfoot activity. My buddy who runs the Bigfoot's Wilderness podcast, he's actually Virginia based as well.
Okay.
And his experience actually happened in Virginia, which kind of catapulted him into doing podcasting for Bigfoot stuff.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I mean, I guess we have Bigfoot.
Yeah.
And then actually I did a little bit of research as well. There's a sea serpent evidently off the coast of like I guess it's Virginia Beach is where like off sort of like the Chesapeake Bay area, and they call
Yes.
it Chessie.
Yes. Very similar to.
That's really the only ones I think we have.
Yeah. I feel like, and I'm not super familiar with the story, but I think there is like a creature, or maybe it's just a man in a costume called the Bunny Man. Have you
Yes,
heard of
yes.
Bunny Man?
I've never
Yeah.
actually been to the bridge, but I know people who would go hang out there.
I see.
And just kind of like a delinquent hangout. But
Yeah.
yeah, that's a weird one. That's definitely a weird one with a lot of like urban legend stuff
Yes.
surrounding it.
Yeah. So I'm from Vermont, and we have a kind of a similar story. Like, Vermont doesn't have a ton of cryptids either, but there's this interesting story about a creature called the Northfield Pigman. And
No.
basically, the story is, and it's an urban legend, and some people kind of think it might be a cryptid, but I'm in the camp that it's more of just like a story to scare kids. But
Mhm.
like, allegedly, it was like in the 50s, this local farm farm boy uh, would terrorize like pigs and stuff, and then on Cabbage Night, the night before Halloween, the this kid, his name was Sam, disappeared and like didn't come back. So like there was like a search for him, and he was never found. Allegedly. I don't know if any of this is actually substantiated, but years and years later, uh, in like the 70s, at the Northfield High School during a school dance, some kids like skipped out on the dance to go like smoke uh, in a sand pit behind the
Sounds very
school.
horror movie.
And then the pig man comes out of the woods, and it's like this, 6 foot tall, like naked humanoid looking being with like the head of a pig, and they all ran out of the area, like went to the school and were like, help, 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 like total horror movie vibes, right?
Yeah.
And then like some teachers ran out, and some like brave students ran out to go see if he was there, but uh there was no trace of the pig man. And
Dang.
yeah, and then so allegedly this pig man lives in an area uh in a nearby town called the Devil's Wash Bowl. And the Devil's Wash Bowl is like, there's this class 4 unmaintained road up a local mountain called Moortown Mountain, and I've been up there, and it's real sketchy to drive on. And there's like maybe like one old farmstead, and it's just like all woods and mountains and all that stuff. So it's very I guess in like the words of like Bobo from Finding Bigfoot, it's very squatchy.
Yeah.
But it's like, certainly there could be maybe something out there, but there was like a further like posting on the internet about it, and allegedly in the 80s some kids like went and did a stakeout, and then the boyfriend of some girl got like his head smashed in by the big man, and his body got dragged away, and they never found him.
Oh, no.
So it's just like, yeah, it's funny, these like urban legend stories will, there's a lot of similarities of like something
Yeah.
happening at a
Yeah.
bridge, or some teenagers go out to like
Do you
party.
think it's just like do you think it's like a collective consciousness that all people have, that they sort of like have these same stories from region to region? Or do you think that it actually travels? Like, I guess people travel, so I mean the stories must travel as well. So I don't know, maybe it's a little bit of both. What do you think?
It could be a little bit of both. If there's it's interesting. On a recent interview, I was talking about the Akashic records, which I'm not sure if you're familiar with that, but
Mm-mm.
it's like basically like the knowledge of like everything, and
Okay.
whether or not like human consciousness is local to the brain, or if we're just like vessels for consciousness to inhabit, to for the universe to experience itself, and like maybe there's some way to access this knowledge, and it's like collective human consciousness is part of that, right? So
Okay.
Yeah, it's it's one of those deep rabbit hole existential
Yeah,
questions.
no, that sounds wow. Sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Definitely look into that sometime. It's pretty weird. So follow up to that. What's your favorite all time cryptid?
Definitely Bigfoot.
Definitely Bigfoot.
Definitely Bigfoot, without a doubt.
Nice, nice. That's awesome. Definitely not surprising.
Yeah, what would you
Um,
have done if I had said, like, I don't know, the chupacabra? You'd be like,
oh
what?
man. Well, that would have just derailed the whole interview. I
Yeah.
don't know. uh, so beyond that ghost story, do you have any other like personal encounter stories? Have you ever seen anything like cryptid like or anything like that?
I've never seen a cryptid. I do have a UFO story though that I could share.
Ah, yeah,
You'd
I'd
be
love to hear
interested
it.
in that.
Absolutely.
Um,
Go ahead.
so I was, and this was like a blatant, a blatant thing. Like I have no other, description for it. Like it was so out there. Um, and there's nothing else that it could have been in my mind. So it's, how like sometimes you see something and you're able to put that little seed of doubt in your mind and you're like, oh well, maybe it was this or maybe it was this. Like this one was not like that at all for
Hmm.
me. So I was driving, um, from Richmond to Fredericksburg, actually, on Route 301, and I was kind of zoning out a little bit, just kind of highway hypnosis, listening to the radio and everything. Um, I was coming back from work, so I mean, I was probably just like, really tired or whatever. And then, so I saw this. It was like a flash, I guess, in the sky, sort of tree level, like at the top of the trees. And I kind of like glanced up at it, and then for whatever, I was just like, oh, airplane. So I just went back to driving, and then it blinked again, and I looked up, and that split second, this is happening, in split seconds, but I was like, that can't be an airplane. It was standing still. So I looked up again, and it, sure enough, it was a sphere, like a round object that was just sitting there above the trees, and it looked, you know, completely mirrored all around. So I don't
Hmm.
know if maybe if it was flashing or if maybe it was reflecting the sun. Like how people, uh, signal, with a mirror.
Sure. Yeah.
That's what it kind of felt like to me. So I was watching it. It blinked or signaled 3 times, and then turned on its axis and totally disappeared.
Wow.
And I was like, like,
What was
I've never
that?
seen anything like this before in my life.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what in the world was that? Like, there's no way. I mean, unidentified flying object is what that was. Like, there's
Yep.
nothing else that it could have been. That's so weird.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's goes back to those kinds of encounters and sightings. They happen when you least expect it. Like they
Yeah.
will show themselves to you when they want to. It's like if you're out looking for that kind of thing, chances are you're
You're
not
not
going to
going to
see
find it.
anything, right?
You know?
Like I have my own UFO stories, which I've talked about on the show before. I saw a triangle, 3 points of light in the sky, while driving home from the movies at night with my brother in the car, and we drove right under the damn thing, and it was there.
Wow.
It was something
Wow.
something in the sky right above the trees, and I've seen I guess you could call them like spook lights or ghost lights, like on the property I grew up on, like flood
I really want to see those. Like, for
zip
some
through
reason, like,
the woods. Yeah, it's
that's like, that scares the living shit out of me. Sorry,
yeah.
living hell out of me. But
Oh, don't mind about swearing, man. That's fine.
okay. I should have asked you before. I totally
It's no
forgot.
worries, no worries.
Um, that scares me though. But I really want to see a split for some reason. I feel like that would be so cool.
Yeah, yeah. I think like 8 or 9 when I saw the one. I was outside, like swimming in the pool, and my mom and her friend were smoking cigarettes on the pool deck, and I surfaced from like being underwater, and I saw this like kind of amber, like sphere of light just zipped through the woods, like
Whoa.
like towards the south, and then I was like, "Huh, what was that?" And then a couple minutes later, it came back from the other direction. And I grew
Wow.
up on a hill, like uh, very very much a wooded area. It was like 5 acres of land, and I grew up playing in the woods too, and like I have a great respect for nature and love being outdoors when I can be. But
Yeah.
yeah, it was just one of those things I can't explain what that thing was,
Yeah.
and you just don't expect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Uh, so going back to your childhood, I
Yes,
I
doctor.
saw that you had a story about your grandfather having dealings with a leprechaun. What's that all about?
That was a made up story, but
Okay. Yeah.
he was also a storyteller, which is where my dad gets it from.
Yep.
But yeah, he has Irish roots, and a lot of the stories that I grew up with were Fae inspired,
Interesting.
with like leprechauns or fairies or elves, whatever stuff like that. So I think it's really, I guess, like an Irish thing, I guess. I don't know.
Sure.
Um, uh, he just really, I mean, that wasn't a true story.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. I saw that on your feed, and I was just like, okay, I should probably ask about this. Like, you have like a family history of dealing with like uh little people and like tiny humanoid
I
beings
wish,
and
I
stuff.
wish, but no, I think that was a fabrication.
Oh, Grandpa, you and your stories.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny because like up in New England, like where I'm from, we have the Bridgewater Triangle, which is infamous
Mhm.
for being a home to the Pukwudgie. Uh,
Yep.
so I'm hoping to make it down there at some point, maybe this summer, to just kind of wander around, and hopefully I don't
The
get
Freetown
messed
Falls
with.
State Forest.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, that'd be
Yeah,
awesome. You should do a show from there.
yeah, I should. I've got some plans to like invest in like a vlogging camera and some remote gear and stuff like that. So
Nice.
hopefully that can happen at some point soon.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, man. So out of like all the different cryptids in the world, and there's so many of them, like which ones do you think have the highest chances of actually being real?
Oh, jeez. Um, a few of the like alien ones I feel like might be real.
Hmm.
Like I think the Flatwoods monster comes to mind, like
Yeah,
just because I think there was a few people that actually experienced it. Like I guess they were kids. Um, I can't remember exactly, but I think it
yeah.
was a bunch of kids, making their way trying to find, the downed aircraft and came upon this creature.
Yep.
Um,
I
and
think some of their
what else
mothers
could
were
that
with them.
be?
Yeah.
I mean, just from the description of it, like what else could that be? I mean, that's an alien cryptid. Like that's a cryptid from outer space. Like,
Right. Yeah.
but yeah, I guess that's really just on eyewitness testimony. I think also Bigfoot could be real. I like the historical aspect of that alone. Like, I mean, they're not making stuff up for fame, back in the
Yeah.
day.
Right.
Um,
Right.
and then and it's still happening today. And there's sightings of Bigfoot today. So I mean, I feel like Bigfoot's probably the number one. But I mean, there are a lot of different cryptids as well that I feel like could be authentic.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Oh, great.
What do you think?
I definitely think Bigfoot is up there. There's so many anecdotal stories, which people will say that doesn't really count for much, but without anecdotal evidence, like what what do you have? I think
Yeah,
there's certainly enough stories and tracks and audio recordings and even some of the video footage out there
Yeah.
is certainly compelling enough for me to make me think that, yeah, these creatures could be real. I mean, Jane Goodall thinks that, it's possible
Yeah.
that Bigfoot exists. So as far as like other cryptids, I think there's a couple that could potentially exist. I think there's something to uh, little people in the Fae, like, and tiny
Yeah.
humanoids, and like
Yeah.
the Kelly Hopkinsville goblins. That's a
That's one of
real
my favorite stories.
that's a real interesting one. That's also kind of like alien-ish, at least with the story, because there's a UFO involved, and
Hmm.
just like the total high strangeness of it. And I'm not I'm not convinced it was owls.
Right. Yeah.
So
What do you
do you,
what do you think about the concept that the Fae and aliens are sort of like the same thing, one and the same, but just, different interpretations, depending on who's viewing them and what
right?
time period you're viewing them in. What
Yeah,
do you
that
think about that?
I mean, that's an interesting school of thought for sure, because whatever you know the phenomenon is that interacts with humankind seems to evolve and change in the different like eras of our history. Like you look back
Yeah.
into like the time of Alexander the Great, and he's conquering India and the Near East, and he sees like flying shields in the sky. Like what, like what could that be? Or
Yeah.
you have like different stories of early Christian Europe where people would see flying crosses in the sky.
Hmm.
You, it's there's it's just like and then the 1800s, when there was like flying airships before we had planes. There's just so many
Hmm.
different examples where it's like, is this all the same thing that's just presenting differently over a period of time, or are
Yeah.
they not connected at all? And maybe the Fae is like an interdimensional thing, and extraterrestrials are extraterrestrials from another
Yeah.
planet. It's
Yeah.
the truth is out there somewhere, and who knows? Maybe it's all nothing, or maybe there's something to it. But you know,
Yeah.
in my experience, and research into the topic, I would say I'm in the camp that there's something going on for sure.
Yeah.
Uh,
Definitely.
yeah. So, no, this is great. So yeah, Bigfoot. What do you think is the best piece of evidence that we have for Bigfoot being real?
Um, well, I think for me at least, and I'll try to tie this a little bit into design client work, which is going to be kind of weird, but I think you'll understand what I'm talking about here. When when a client comes to you with a project and you want to convince them that your project is what they want, basically, um, what you don't do is give them one thing to look at and scrutinize. You give them a couple different things to look at so that they can see it and say, oh, I like this and I like this and I like this, could you put this together and maybe make something different, bring it all together, so it turns more positive that way, as
Yeah.
opposed to, oh, I don't like this, I think you should change this, this. So I think the same thing goes for Bigfoot, and that it's not one piece of evidence that would necessarily a skeptic would look at and say, oh, well, this is the definitive proof right here. I think you have to kind of take different things and put them together and say, so like an example would be the Patterson Gimlin film, which I think is a fantastic piece of evidence if you scrutinize or if you look at it and are able to see there, if you have that trained eye. But also other components to that whole story are like Patterson and Gimlin's eyewitness account. That's one thing. Bob Titmus's casts of the footprints that were in the sandbar. So taking, the sandbar footprints and comparing them with what you see in the film, that somehow, in my mind at least, makes things a little bit more credible. So I think you really need to, instead of examine one thing, be able to take a whole bunch of different things and put it together. And, they support one another, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, for sure.
Does that kind of make sense?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, having corroborating pieces of evidence just strengthens the case. If you have just like one footprint that you have a cast of, or a piece of hair, or one obscure video, it's not gonna prove anything. And obviously, there's going to need to be a body or some kind of like extraordinary like face-to-face interaction with multiple people and have it be on camera with where you can like unequivocally say like, yep, this is real, before people are going to be like, okay. Yeah. So yeah, no, that's great.
Patterson Gimlin film is really awesome though.
It is. I love the 4K like upscale that was done, where you can see like the thigh jiggle and like just like the musculature of Patty's body. And I know that film has been scrutinized so much in the past 50-60 years since it came out. And
I think the only other film that's been scrutinized so hard is the JFK assassination film.
Yeah.
I think I heard that on Astonishing Legends. Have you heard the astonishing deep dive in that film?
I haven't actually checked out that episode. I'll have to do it.
You should definitely. I mean, if you have 12 hours to spare, definitely go into that.
Oh yeah,
it's awesome. It's really cool.
Yeah, I definitely gotta. I have a lot of catching up to do on podcasts. It's like running your own podcast and doing all your own content. And yeah,
you're a busy dude.
I am a busy dude.
You're a busy dude.
Yeah. It's kind of like my full-time, my not full-time job. So yeah, we're getting close to the top of the hour here. Just want to do a couple more questions for you. I got to go back to the Pale Crawler beer label you did, which you dropped like right around the same time I did my episode on them.
Yeah. Synchronicities.
What do you think Pale Crawlers are? Do you think they're real?
I definitely think they're real. I think though that they're probably more on the supernatural side. I tend to lean more to the supernatural on that specific cryptid. And I actually read something recently. I think it was Expanded Perspectives or something. Hold on a sec. I think I wrote it down somewhere. Yeah, Expanded Perspectives did an episode on Pale Crawlers as well. And they actually had a encounter that happened in Virginia.
Oh.
Which I was like, what? No, don't do that.
Yeah.
But it was these ambulance drivers. They were driving, down an old country road after a call.
Yeah.
And they turn the corner, and their high beams hit this thing standing in the field, crouched in the field, and they were like, "What in the world?" They passed it, so they're like, "What was it?" They both saw it.
Yeah.
The long legs, the long arms, bone white,
totally gaunt.
Yeah, totally Gollum-looking dude out in the field, and and they actually went back to see if they could find it again, and it wasn't there.
Yeah.
But what fascinated me about it was that these were ambulance drivers.
Mm-hmm.
They're around carnage and death all day long.
Yeah.
So that really started making me think, number one, what was their call beforehand? I wish I know what that was.
Right.
But it kind of reiterates that theory that maybe these things are supernatural in, in what they are.
Yeah.
Also, maybe they feed on, negative energy, or, maybe they feed on death or something. I don't know. Cause I feel like they're always they're associated with death in some way, or, they're also like seen around cemeteries a lot as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that kind of correlated with me a little bit, and it's made me think about it.
Yeah, that's there. It's a very interesting and like developing case. It's. I know there's a lot of people that will make their like creepypasta type stories, so it's hard to know what's true or not out there. But there's enough compelling testimony out there that makes me think there's something going on. And it is
Yeah.
interesting that you know a lot of the stories do seem to lend themselves towards whatever they are being some kind of supernatural or maybe interdimensional type of
Mhm.
being. There was this one story that I actually posted on my Instagram feed. I think it was last summer, and it was a guy who posted it on Reddit, and he was out in Western PA, kind of like near the Pittsburgh area, I think, and he was out camping with some buddies, and he was like going out to like go collect wood for the fire. It was like early March, I think. It was like right before the pandemic hit. And he was saying that he would like go out. He was like a Boy Scout, so he knew how to do like the survival skill stuff, and all his buddies were, getting messed up and having a good time partying. And then he wound up having to go further and further to go find firewood because the campsite they were at was like picked clean. And he started like having these like weird like things start happening. Like he'd hear this like whistling sound like
Yeah.
surrounding him, and then eventually he, I think it was like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and he was like out grabbing wood, and he hears one of his friends call to him, and he calls back, and then he doesn't hear anything in response, and then he's just like, yo, don't mess with me. And then he like hightails it out of the spot he was in, and he started hearing this thing like flanking him, like
Ugh.
like chasing after him, and he could hear like the weird whistling noise, and then he like hit the dirt and found like a little like spot he could hide out in. Like there was like a little bit of like a ditch with some leaves and some branches and stuff, and he like jumped in there and then waited a minute, and he looked, and and it was dark and kind of snowy, but he saw this like silhouette of like some weird gaunt lanky creature standing in the spot that he was in, that called out when he called
Yeah.
out towards his friend. And then he heard it like say a couple of things like mimicking his voice and mimicking his friends.
Oh.
And then it like left the area, and at like breakneck speed, like faster than like a natural animal would move. So
Oh
it's like I
man,
read that story, man, and that was just like, ooh,
that
like
is
no
creepy.
thank you. So whether or not that's 100% true, or if it was made up, it's hard to say. But either way, the guy was pretty good at painting a picture with
Yeah,
words, for
that's
sure.
creepy. That's
Yeah,
super creepy.
yeah, definitely not something I want to run into ever.
I think there's also like a historic precedence for that as well. I think it's the Cree Indians have they're the First Nations in Canada. I think it's called the Minigishi. I don't know if you've ever heard
Yes.
the Minigishi, but
Hmm.
it's supposedly a humanoid creature that hides in the rocks in the river and causes accidents with canoes and drownings and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
they also kind of um, they I guess they describe it as a pale, like very lanky kind of creature that you know preys on people that are out in nature. So that's very similar to all these pale crawler things.
Yeah, no, definitely. I actually, I did a little bit of a piece on my Pale Crawlers episode, uh, going into the Menegishi a little bit,
Okay.
because there are some similarities there. It's definitely pretty interesting. It's a lot of like the First Nations, Native American tribes have all this folklore and legend, and it's like there's a lot of really interesting stuff in their folklore that talks about a lot of these creatures in similar
Yeah.
ways, and it's just like, is there something that's been here for a long time and might not
We're
want to
still
mess with
talking
it?
about it.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Great. Well, I think I'm going to throw in a couple audience questions for you. Couple curveballs here. So our first question we have from Jeremiah over at Bigfoot Society.
What's up, Jeremiah?
Our good buddy. So
Yeah.
he asks, what are the main resources that you use as reference for when you draw?
Let's see. Like, so for the Sasquatch paintings that I do, I'll usually try to find a couple different reference images, like via Pinterest or just like a Google search. Usually I'll have something in mind, like Yosemite National Park or something like that, and I'll type that in and bring up a couple images and then try to compose something through that. So really just online stuff. And then with the cryptids themselves, like drawing Bigfoot, I tend to look at pictures of bonobo apes a lot. Like I feel like I really like drawing a lanky Sasquatch. Like a lot of eyewitness reports, say that they're very thick and big and tall.
Yeah.
But I for some reason I identify with a lanky Sasquatch. I don't know why. I think it's more fun to draw that way.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Great. Our next question comes from the Mr. Sam Sharon, and he asks, "What's your favorite science fiction monster of all time?"
Favorite science fiction monster? Man, that's a tough one.
There's a lot.
Maybe the Predator. I really like the Predator.
Nice.
That was one of those movies that I saw way too young as
Yep.
well. It just like scarred me for life in a good way. So yeah, I think I'm gonna go with the Predator right now.
Nice.
Tomorrow, ask me tomorrow, and I may go with something totally different. But right now, it's Predator.
That's great. That's great. I think Gremlins 2 was probably that movie for me.
That one's good. Oh, actually, The Fly as well. I really like The Fly.
Ooh.
Jeff Goldblum.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That one really freaked me out when I was a kid.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. The practical effects in that movie are gross.
Yeah.
All right, and then we've got one final question from our buddy Easton Hawk, and he asks, "What's your favorite Bigfoot Yeti encounter story?"
Oh, Bigfoot Yeti encounter story. I'll go with Yeti on this one. I don't know that I actually have a favorite one, but I when he said Yeti, this one popped into my mind. Was doing the cryptid drawing per day of the story back in October. I found this story where these Sherpas, were going through the mountains, trying to find all their herd basically that had gotten away. And they started hearing these really awful screams in the distance, and they were like, nope, we gotta find cover. So they jumped into this little cave, basically. They were like, screw the herd, we're getting in the cave because we've heard awful stories about what's going on here. And all night long they heard screams and whistles and all kinds of really crazy sounds. And then the next day they emerged from the cave to find 2 or 3 of their herd just totally smeared across the tundra.
Yes.
And that was, I can't remember exactly, I can't remember who wrote that one, but it was an explorer, I guess, who went in search of the Yeti at one point and was gathering all these stories up from the locals. So yeah,
Wow.
that was a good one. I thought that was a really pretty good story.
That's brutal.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I like the violent ones.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, wow. So yeah, we might as well start wrapping things up here. Jonathan, you're planning on being at some upcoming festivals later this year. Can you tell my audience which ones you're going to be at, and are you vending at them, or are you just hanging out?
Yeah, I'm going to be at Cryptid Bash on August the 7th.
Right on.
That's the event that the Moth Boys are putting on. There's going to be Small Town Monsters movies being played. There's going to be a brewery, Greenbrier Valley Brewing Company is going to be there. And then just like the best cryptid vendors you could think of are going to be there. I'm so excited to get there. Just like me and you, like we've talked on Instagram, every now and then. We like each other's posts. We post each other's posts and stuff like that. We share everything, but I'm really excited to like face to face meet everybody. So that's probably of the summer where we're all going to be together. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be a time. It's that'll be my first first festival vending at, so it's gonna be
Me too.
an
Me too.
experience.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah.
trying. I'm gonna like figure my table and everything.
Nice.
And then in November is CryptidCon. I'll be at CryptidCon. That's November 20th and 21st in Lexington, Kentucky. I'll be vending there and slinging my merch.
Right on. Right on. So one final question I've got for you. It's I've been kind of asking all my guests this. Uh, just kind of a fun closer. Out of all the high strangeness out there in the world, what keeps you up at night the most?
I don't know, bro. The high strangeness is kind of my escape. I like the real world stuff that scares the shit out of me. So
Right on. So you live and breathe the whole world of weird. That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, this has been a super fun conversation, Jonathan. Can you tell my listeners where they can find you online?
Sure. My Instagram is at Jonathan Dodd _draws. And my website is jonathandodddraws.com. You can contact me there, hit me up.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everyone for listening to the show today. This has been a great time. So Jonathan's agreed to hang out for a little bit for the Patreon segment of the show. We're gonna talk about some Bigfoot stories and some other weird topics as well. So definitely stick around after the regular show is over for patrons. All right, everyone. We will see you next time. And thanks again, Jonathan, for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
Thanks again to Jonathan Dodd for coming onto the show. Again, make sure to follow him over on his Instagram and check out his shop over on TeePublic if you'd like to purchase any of his art. It's always awesome to support independent artists as much as we can. And definitely say hi if you're going to be out at any of the upcoming festivals that he'll be vending at. So yeah, definitely check that out. All right, and time for the usual shout out session. As always, a big shout out to all my patrons who help make this show possible. Without your help and your support, this thing wouldn't be getting to the place it would be now. And you're all very much appreciated and awesome. So shout out to Alex Dorgan, Alyssa, Robin from the Mystic Novelty Company, Christine McTire, Chad from Appalachian Huntsman, Michael Waddell from MetaZoo Games, Greg Morrill from All the Weird and the Order 66 podcast, Roberto Martinez, Sean Colon, Miranda Jarnot, John Hickenbottom, Sarah Sherg, Maureen Asmat, Daniel Preparedwolf, Kathy Howard, and Gail Frederick. If you'd like to become a patron and support the show, head on over to patreon.com/Strangeology for more information. Once you're there, you can check out all the tiers that I have. There's really awesome rewards, like shoutouts, as you just heard, early access to content, exclusive content, as well as exclusive merch. I'll be working on some more exclusive merch hopefully soon. And also the Strangeology Beyond segment of the show, which is only for my patrons, and merch discounts and some more stuff too. So definitely check it out. And as always, for my regular listeners out there, thank you so much for listening to my show and sharing it with friends and family. And you're all awesome. And thank you so much for listening and sharing the podcast and being into what I do. I definitely appreciate it so much. Also, make sure to follow me on all my social media accounts if you haven't yet. My main base of operations is really Instagram, but I'm also on Facebook, Twitter, and TikTok as well. And if you have any personal stories of encounters with anything strange and unexplained, give a call into the Strangeology hotline. The number is 802-448-0612. Again, that's 802-448-0612. I'm hoping to compile a collection of stories submitted from listeners and followers, hopefully to put together a fun episode in the near future. Early on, I did an episode of written entries that people emailed in to me. So this time around, I'd love to do a call-in version and hopefully get some cool stuff going. Just a heads up, there's a 3-minute time limit on the voicemail. So if your story does take longer than that, just call back and leave another message picking up where you left off. And as always, my DMs are always open. If you have any comments or suggestions, you can also email me at strangeologist@gmail.com. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the free part of the episode today. Thanks again for tuning in. And for patrons, stick around after the break for Strangeology Beyond. Jonathan and I got into more Fortean topics, high strangeness, and some cool Bigfoot stories. So definitely stick around and give it a listen. So until next time, take care of yourselves and each other, and keep it strange. All right, welcome back to the show for the Strangeology Beyond segment for all y'all patrons out there. Definitely has been an awesome time talking with Jonathan Dodd tonight. John, thanks for hanging out again. We're gonna talk and just kind of let it. Yeah, we're just gonna let this flow. And Jonathan's got some cool Bigfoot stories that he's gonna share, and a couple other weird things that I'm not quite sure. Well, let's just
what do I have in store?
I know. Let's just let this rock here.